The FCC saga continues, or rather, the net neutrality battle. And in today's chapter, I wanted to lay out my rationale for why I believe the current chairman, Ajit Pai, should not be the face of contempt when one is repulsed by the actions of removing net neutrality. Um, for those of you who are unaware, there have been protests around Pai's home. His neighbors have received material with his name, his age, his weight, his height. There was some banner at one point that said something to the effect of, in reference to his children, they will know that daddy destroyed democracy, or something to that effect. Let me say hello to ALU. So, when you have comments of that nature, they kind of move beyond addressing the issue we have with him and with the other members of the FCC, and go into this personal territory. And I don't want there to be any misconceptions. Protest in and of itself is not necessarily something I'm opposed to. You know, you can have people rally around the FCC headquarters, I guess his house, but when you're going to pester the neighbors who they did nothing to enact those policies, there becomes an issue, and especially as children, they are the byproduct of a group of people who, in some cases, are so upset that they extend their rage beyond the person that actually is causing them to feel this way, which in this case would be the chairman of the FCC, as well as other members on that board that voted against the Title II regulations. And they're coming after people who just have relations and they couldn't help having. And they didn't get to pick who their father was, but nonetheless, that's another issue I have with much of the blowback that he's received for his actions, and which I'm by no means defending, but one really has to think about this, because I've seen much of the comments that have been left targeting him and speaking very disturbingly about the intentions people have toward him. And what seems to not be understood by a lot of those who are upset with political figures at this point, much of it being relayed toward Trump, is that if you get rid of the person who's promoting an ideology or policies, it's very likely that the person who replaces them shares those same ideologies and various policies. For example, one of my main reasons for being opposed to Trump's impeachment, which first of all is because I don't think there's any grounds for, but also it appeared that a lot of people weren't thinking about Pence's actual record and how it would be a repeat of everything Trump's done, except without the constant foible of arguing back and forth with random people on social media. The other thing of conveying this point is that if you get rid of Pai, which some people have proposed doing in ways such as removal from office via his chairmanship being rescinded, or more extreme cases, all you're going to get is someone else who has the same ideology. Trump is going to say, oh man, we lost Chairman Pai, and then, oh, I'm going to nominate Joe Smo from Nebraska, and he's going to be against net neutrality as well. And that's kind of a recurring theme with a lot of these Republicans, or just various conservative figures that are currently in office. There are some who aren't that way, but a good chunk of them, even the ones that I thought would be in favor of net neutrality, are against it. And part of what I'm trying to convey here is that when there's such a wide variety of people that believe in something, getting rid of one of them who can actually advance that view, at least in a democracy, is likely to ensure that that view gets pushed further with a more emboldened rhetoric based on what was done to the predecessor of the person with that ideology. For example, Pai gets removed from office through some means in this hypothetical scenario. Then you get someone else who's against net neutrality as well, and they're going to just try to mess with it as well, or two. It's going to be a repeat where the only difference is the name, face, age, and maybe gender of the person who's doing it this time. but you get a complete return of the same policy that bothered you beforehand. And what's kind of amusing in a way is that you have so many people who are just getting enraged over seeing him on TV, seeing his various. There was the one video about the 7 things you could still do online. BVS says one steps down, another one steps up to bat. That's true. Yeah, but it has to do with this. That's the way democracy works. You have a leader and then they have a successor. The problem is the leader and the current person in charge and his immediate successor, as long as Trump or any other conservative is in office, is going to most likely be opposed to net neutrality and try to do this again. And again, I want this to keep making this as transparent as possible. This is not an attack on the Republicans from some supporter of the Democrats. The only thing that I have in common right with them now is that even the corporate Democrats are actively opposed to the measure of getting rid of net neutrality. So I'm not on anyone's side when it comes to most things, but this is definitely an issue to be with the left on. Because I think we all enjoy our internet that's not restricted by people who dislike a certain portion of it, i.e., any of these service providers messing with websites because they're not in favor of whatever the content is of there. Those things are banned under current protections, but with that vote against it, we might not be in that same environment for much longer. And what's disturbing is that people seem more now angered to the point of just being mad at Pai and not being mad at the system. That's what needs to be addressed. The system is what allowed a person who was appointed to their position to control something that so many of us are just used to living with. And, if we have to find a way to make it to where we vote in the FCC chairman, have an election for that, let's do it. We have to. Some of these offices are just they're not. There is a point in democracy where you have to allow the people's will to determine things. Part of what the Supreme Court did was that, in being a body that one had to get nominated for by the president and then confirmed by the Senate, you're not forced to think, oh, this law is going to be controversial in the eyes of these people. And while that may work for a group of 9, 8, well, having one person that just gets put in this position of high power and is doing things of that nature, I think is very disheartening. And there needs to be a couple of things that come out of this. And again, forget talking about Pai. The man is not... I've seen so many nasty things written about him. Here's the truth. He is a... what's a good term for it? He's the equivalent of what the corporate Democrats are for their donors. Where, in the case of Pai, he's Verizon's guy. Pai's Verizon's guy. He was their lawyer, and now that he's in his position, he's going to make sure that that service provider and others benefit from him being in that position. It's a return investment. But what needs to come out of this is that net neutrality needs to be the next constitutional amendment, and also we need to have our FCC chairmen elected at this point, because we need to. Whenever they say, why do you want that office to be determined by the common man? Just say Ajit Pai or the 2017 net neutrality repeal that they tried to hide over the holidays, and we all caught on to it. So that's my piece on this. I'll have something else out very soon. I realize I've kind of neglected net neutrality since that vote happened last week. I didn't have much to say about it because I was so convinced that when you have a variety of topics that you want to get into, you tend to feel that if you stay on one thing, people are going to say, oh, he's still talking about that. Oh, I don't want to hear it anymore. So that was what led to me not being in favor of just making it this daily thing as I was doing at that point. But I'll definitely get back to it, or at least address it regularly again. I figured a week hiatus would be a nice cooling period if one comprehends my meaning there. So thank you.